My favourite backyard game as a kid would have been jumpers for goalposts. It was literally at the front of your house or at the local park where you'd be dodging cars, you'd be dodging swings, climbing frames, seesaws, all sorts. It was usually 15 aside, something like that. All the local kids would be out playing. And it was also designed to play a rush goalkeeper mode, so whoever was last in goal would be the goalkeeper. To distinguish the teams, it would be whatever colour t-shirts you had, so roughly the same sort of colours within your teams. There was no real pitch size, so it was whatever space you had, and you would play until it was literally dark and you could no longer see the ball.
My favourite game growing up didn't have a name, it was a scenario. It was the FA Cup final, because that was the big competition when I was growing up. That was what was on the telly every year. My favourite player was Mark Hughes, great volleyer of the ball, and I wanted to be just like him. So what I would do is I would throw the ball against the side of my house, and as it would come down, I would try and volley the ball into the goal. I'd actually play the part of my opponent as well, and I'd have an opposition. So I'd take a volley as Mark Hughes, and then I'd take a volley as my opponent. If I struck the ball cleanly, that counted as a goal. If I didn't strike the ball cleanly, that didn't count as a goal. And I'd have a penalty shootout essentially, but of volleys, connecting with it cleanly, having thrown the ball off the side of the house. Trying to reflect on it, I actually think that sometimes if I was, in a spot of bother, I'd deliberately mess up when playing the part of my opponent. But that's an endearing memory I have from growing up.
So the game I used to play with friends when growing up was called Slam. It's a really simple game. We'd find a wall locally, kind of any shape, any size. There'd normally be a group of us. It's quite flexible in terms of the amount of people that could play the game. We'd set some really simple ground rules, so it could be that each player has a maximum of one touch, and we'd also sort of run an order as well. Simply all you had to do was to strike a football against the wall, then the next person had one touch to also strike the ball back against the wall, and you'd keep working through that running order until somebody missed the target. If you missed a target, you were out, and then you would continue the game until somebody else missed a target, and you'd keep working through until there was one person left, and that last person was the overall winner. Slam was really good for decision making because you'd have to make a quick decision on whether to wait to see where the football landed before you decided to strike it back, which meant that normally you'd have to strike back from a longer distance, or you could try and anticipate where the ball might go so you could try and strike it back over a shorter distance. Sometimes we'd change the equipment and use a tennis ball and tennis racket. It's the same concept, but literally just hitting the tennis ball against the wall using the racket. So you could be quite adaptable in terms of the equipment that you decided to use as well.
So, been asked to record a bit about background games and games you played growing up as a child. I guess I don't really remember many games. What I do remember is just playing, just having the opportunity to play, getting out there. My earliest memory would be as a child going out and playing football, gathering as many people from the close as we could, getting a ball, literally jumpers for goalposts, that sort of thing. We had a wall where we put some chalk up and mark out a goal, and then whoever was bravest would wear their duffel coat normally and would be in goal, and we would literally play. We'd have to play 2 on 2, 3 on 3, 5 on 4, whatever it was, whatever the numbers were, people played. And you played until it got dark or until someone called you in for food or drink or told you had to go somewhere. So it really was an opportunity, and you had the chance to get on a ball, you had a chance to be free, to try some new stuff, to use both feet, to dive around if you were in goal. Nobody picked out any mistakes or criticised you or tried to point you in a direction, but you just learnt from doing. You had loads of opportunities just to be free and try and play football. That was my earliest memory in terms of playing sport. Then when I got into a bit of basketball, I guess the one game we always played was Killer, where you stand in line, 2 balls at the front of the queue, and you have to shoot and try and score before the person in front of you scores to try and knock them out. We used to play that down the park. We used to play that on any court we could find, and we constantly played over and over again, not worrying about your technique, not focusing too much on anything technical, but just scoring a basket, just getting the ball in the hoop. and finding ways to do that, being as creative as possible. You know, sometimes you'd have to take up bouncers if your ball bounced too far. Sometimes you have to shoot from range. Sometimes it was close in. Sometimes you had to use a little hook shot. Sometimes you knocked your mate out the way so they couldn't score and you could. Always with a smile on the face, always trying something new, always being free and able just to have a go at the things you probably wouldn't normally in some formalised coaching sessions. So as a child, I just enjoyed playing. I just enjoyed getting out there, doing it, having experience and being free and exploring with sport.
My favourite game growing up was Wembley. We'd have one goal, sometimes this was an actual goal, and other times this was just 2 bags on the floor. Everyone would play, so we could have a game with 4 or 44. We'd play in a small area, so maybe like an 18-yard box, and if a lot of people played, we'd play doubles where we'd have a partner. There would be one goalkeeper who was also the ref. Being in goal was a bit rubbish because literally everyone was trying to score past you. But because you were also the ref, you were in control. You could give free kicks, penalties, decide who got the goal when there were deflections and people claimed they got the last touch. You were in complete control of the game. As players, we would try to score and try to stop everyone else from scoring at the same time. I loved the game. You would take players on, shoot, you would use skill, but within 2 seconds you'd be throwing your body in the way of someone else shooting in the same goal you were just trying to score in. It was chaos. If you scored, you'd go through to the next round, and if you were the last one left, you'd go out, and that was a bit rubbish. We'd keep going until we get to the final 2, and then we'd play until there was a winner. Now if time was up, like the bell went for the end of lunch, then we'd play next goal wins. And usually everyone who was out would just run back on the pitch and just try to play for that final minute to try and get the final goal to win. And that was crazy. It was chaos, but it also led to the funniest moments. It was interesting because we learned how to attack, we learned how to defend, we learned how to take players on, control the ball in tight areas, look for space, block shots, defend against players one-on-one, decide when to tackle and when to stand off. Almost everything you need in football happened in those games.
My favourite game growing up was probably a game called Kirby. Simple game. All you needed usually was a football, a road, a good street to play on, and then someone to play against. Usually 1v1, but you could also have partners, so 2v2 games. And all it would be is you're trying to throw the football from one side of the road across to try and hit the curb of the opposition. Every time you did that, you got a point, and you got to move closer to their side, so just from a few feet away, you got to throw the ball again. Every time you hit the curb, you got a point, so you could go 1, 2, 3, get lots of points before the opposition got the ball back. However, when you miss it, and you always miss it at some point, the opposition gets the ball, and they can get to throw it at you before you sprint back to your side. So if they hit you before you get back to safety, they get all your points. That's how we played. It was brilliant. It's a really good game because then you're trying to hope that they hit the curb so they can come to your side. So it was a bit of like an invasion game, and you're trying to steal their points. So you're trying to think about tactics as well. It was good for me growing up because my brother and sister weren't really sporty people, but they absolutely loved playing that game. It was nice and simple. But probably the best part of it made you feel like a bit of a leader when you were a kid. Is any time a car came past and you got to be the one that shouted, "Car!" and everyone moved out the way.